Have you ever watched a show that managed to raise your expectations for it just for a future episode to disappoint you so badly? That's where I'm at with The Last of Us, the TV series. Episode 5, Endure and Survive. This episode put my expectations in the ground, not even in the ground, but deep, deep underground, to the point that I just can't believe it. Let's get this out of the way. I'm not a reviewer or a professional. I'm just a gal on the internet with a mic and the ability to record her own voice. Everyone can have their own opinion, they can agree, they can disagree. You know, I'd love to hear different opinions and different thoughts, but these are my own. And I'm saying this because going on Twitter after that episode and wondering if I'm just clinically insane, The Last of Us episode 5, plain and simple, was a mess. It was a giant mess. I think it was actually, so far, because this is the last episode that came out, no matter when this video actually drops and comes out, this is the day that The Last of Us episode 5, Endure and Survive, dropped. Just for context, because I have no idea when this will be uploaded. Editing is hard, man. But back to the topic at hand, because I so easily get distracted by all of my thoughts. I went in with high expectations because after episode 3 with Bill and Frank, The Last of Us the TV series just raised the bar for me. I do feel like they did Bill and Frank better than the game, or at least their take on it was what an adaptation should be. So I went into the episode where Henry and Sam would be the main focus, thinking that, okay, they're gonna raise the bar, they're gonna elevate this. I still wanted to see their ending, and this will have spoilers for that episode, but by the time this comes out, honestly, it probably won't matter. I wanted to at least see their ending unchanged, but the road to get there were so many ways that they could do it. There were so many ways that they could take their own spin on it. And, oh boy, they did take their own spin on it, but I think if I had no prior knowledge of the game, I would have enjoyed this episode a lot more. But knowing what they left out and knowing what they did to Henry, and to a lesser extent Sam, I just could not enjoy this episode. At every turn, this episode disappointed me. And this is not to say that there are no good things about this episode, because Henry's actor, he was very good in the time that he was able to deliver emotional scenes, which was at the very end for about 5 or so seconds. But in that moment, I actually felt it. I felt it the same way I felt Sarah's death. Sarah's actor very much embodied Sarah, and I felt things for that scene. And I feel like both of those actors are very good actors. I just wish the writers did things differently with them. I honestly think the biggest fumble of this episode and the last episode was Kathleen. And let's start there. Let's start with Kathleen because she is the main issue I have with this episode. Kathleen is just such a boring villain. Kathleen is the leader of a resistance group that managed to take Kansas City from the government, basically. Fedra, that's the name. And I actually thought that was an interesting idea, seeing things from the, I guess, rebels, quote unquote, perspective. But I also felt like it was so shallow that there was no point. Because all we know about the resistance is that they managed to take over the city, and Fedra could never really get a hold on the city after they took it over. They basically were able to form their own, not government, but their own leadership, I guess, and do things their way. And also that they are looking for rats and people that betrayed their group. Which is okay as a base, but we learn nothing else about this resistance group. Like, literally nothing else about the resistance group, other than that they resisted and were successful. We know that Kathleen is the leader, I guess, but they just run the city, and that's just how it is. I'm not saying that we need, you know, an entire episode devoted to politics. If you're going to focus on the resistance and the people in the resistance and the leadership of the resistance, I would have liked to see how the resistance worked, I guess, at least the bare minimum of how it worked or how they are holding the city. It's just mentioned briefly a few times that they're still infected in the city, which, okay, and it's implied that the infected is in the sewers or in the tunnels underground. It's all very surface level. We don't actually learn anything about this group. What are their goals? Of course their goals are to take over Kansas City, but now they have Kansas City and their goals seem to just be hold it to hold it. I mean, maybe future episodes will go over this, but I doubt it since their leadership is dead. And most likely, Joel and Ellie will leave that city by the next episode and move on. And we'll never hear from it again. It'll just be a thing that happened. I will call it right now that that's exactly what'll happen. It might be mentioned as in we knew somebody from Kansas City or we went to Kansas City, but I doubt they're going to go into what it actually means for a city like Kansas City to fall to zombies, and what the response might be from Fedra or survivors or anything. It's world building, right? You can't dip your toes in the water like that and then be like, okay, that's enough. I'm gonna go dry off my feet now. No, if you're going to world build, you have to commit to world building. You can't just do surface level world building. And that's exactly what happened. Why bother? You should have just had the hunters that had no personality and were just NPCs to throw at Joel and Ellie in the game. Because these people, they're basically NPCs. They're NPCs that can talk and they have feelings, except we only really get to know the leader of the Resistance and her, I guess, first mate, her first lieutenant. And that's pretty much it. Everyone else is a faceless NPC. And I just really didn't like that. Why focus on these people if you're not going to focus on these people? So Kathleen, she kills a doctor, she wants information on who the rat is, and Henry's name is brought up. If you don't play the game, you don't know who Henry is. She just keeps mentioning over and over that she's looking for Henry, that she thinks Henry sold out her brother, and she wants them to find Henry. She thinks that Joel and Ellie, when they come to town, are with Henry, and she kept mentioning Henry so much. All we knew about this guy that she was so hell-bent on looking for was that he possibly sold out her brother, which led to her brother being brutally killed and murdered. But this character keeps being mentioned, seems super important. We don't even know why she would assume that Joel and Ellie are with Henry. We have no idea why she would assume that. He's just mentioned over and over and over, and that's supposed to be something. It was just a lot of nothing. It was just a lot of her. She could have said any name. That's the thing, she could have said any name. She could have said, oh, go look for Bob. Go look for Billy Bob Thornton, right? Go look for Bob out there. Do you think these people that came into our town are with Bob? You could have replaced Henry with any name and it would have had the same effect. That's what I'm trying to say. The long-winded approach to saying something simple. So Kathleen's looking for Henry, and Henry, let's talk about that for a second. The fact that Henry turns out to be a rat. Near the end of the episode, it's revealed, the middle-ish, kind of the end, like 20 minutes before, but it's an hour episode, so it's hard to say what starts as the end or the final act. So Henry is a rat, which honestly, I felt like was just a tiny bit of character assassination. I felt like they could have made it work, but the way they did it definitely did not make it work. Henry had a good reason for doing it, so they gave Sam leukemia. I don't think he had leukemia in the game. Maybe, but I don't think so. Because leukemia isn't that simple. The way they describe leukemia in the show is like, you get some medicine for leukemia, and then you just have it under control. You just have no problems. We never once see Sam taking medicine, right? We never once see Sam having to inject himself or having symptoms of leukemia, especially when you're in a situation like the zombie apocalypse. Having leukemia wouldn't be as simple as just, hey, I'm gonna take medicine and now it's gone. Hooray for me. Having a disease like that in the apocalypse would be way more challenging on the person, and I don't think Sam would be as healthy as he is, personally. But they just throw out that Sam had leukemia, and that's cool, I guess. In order to protect his brother, because Fedra offered his brother medicine for his leukemia, he sold out the leader of the Resistance at the time, who was Kathleen's brother. So it makes sense why Kathleen's on a warpath for him. It makes sense why the Resistance is also gunning for Henry. That's not my problem with that. It all makes logical sense. So it's not that they can't change his backstory, it's that I don't like that every single character apparently needs to be connected to the main plot or part of a larger plot. A side character can't just exist on their own in this show. They need to be connected to some major plot. They need to be connected to major story threads. And yes, Game Henry was connected to major story threads through the Fireflies. The difference is I felt like that did a lot of world building for the Fireflies, like the Fireflies' reach, that it was not worldwide, but countrywide, I guess. And the Fireflies were actually a powerful group. It helped the credibility of bringing Ellie to them, which the show hasn't really done. Except for Marlene being like, we'll provide you with, supplies and this and this. We haven't seen the Fireflies' presence, really, other than in Boston. In the second episode? But this Henry, they completely threw away the original backstory and gave him this new backstory for no other reason than to connect him to the larger plot and connect him to Joel and Ellie, which he didn't need to be connected. There was nothing meaningful about Henry's changes to his character. Henry has to be connected to the larger plot because he can't just be someone that stumbled upon Joel and Ellie like a survivor. He just can't be someone who lives in the world. Not everyone in the world is special. Not everyone in the world is a main character. Not everyone in the world is a main character. They don't need to be the center of the story to exist. And I truly wish writers, and not just The Last of Us, writers in general would understand that characters can just exist in a vacuum. They did it with Bill and Frank. Joel did have a connection to Bill in the game, but we didn't need a whole flashback sequence to know that Joel and Bill had some history, right? We didn't need to see how they met. We didn't need to see that they shook hands or that they exchanged codes and phone numbers. We could just infer from their conversation in the present that they had a past, and it wasn't that important to see. But making Henry the center point of Kathleen's world, the center point of her narrative and the Resistance narrative, I feel like damages both characters because Kathleen has nothing else going for her as a character. She wants revenge for her brother, and to get that revenge, she wants to kill Henry. And that's her entire character. Kathleen does not need a 50-page backstory or a sob story or to be a sympathetic character. She just has to be a character. And having one personality trait and then dying is not a character. To be a character, you have to be unique. And you could have had any of the other Resistance members, quote unquote, say that, hey, we hate Henry too because he killed our leader, your brother. And they would have been the exact same as Kathleen. There would be no difference between Kathleen and random NPC number 456. And that's my problem with Kathleen. She's so boring. And even later on with Kathleen, Henry offers to give himself up at one point. You know, he does the whole thing. He's like, spare the children and I'll die. I'll take the fall. And Kathleen's like, F them kids. She actually says, sometimes kids die. Sometimes kids just gotta die. Sam is connected to you, so he gotta die. Ellie is connected to Joel, so she gotta die. That's when Kathleen completely lost me because it was just like she was reading from the supervillain handbook. Yeah, them kids gotta die. Okay. I wouldn't have been surprised if Kathleen stopped and gave a supervillain monologue, or if she put down her gun and started boasting about how she was gonna kill them, how she was gonna torture them, how she was gonna make them suffer, or what else do typical villains, like NPC villains in movies do? She was already pretty, but I was hoping the writers could turn it around because my high expectations were just trying to stay intact, but it didn't happen. If she didn't have a name and had the same motivation, her character would not change. I don't know if anyone understands what I'm trying to say with this about Kathleen, but there it is. I'll just put it out there. I liked Henry when he just happened to stumble onto Joel and Ellie by chance, because it made the world, at least to me, it made the world feel kind of alive because these things happen. Not everything is done on purpose. Not everything is a big plot. I feel like they didn't like that Henry and Sam stumbled upon Joel and Ellie while they were traveling to seek out the Fireflies. And they were like, no, he needs a reason to be there. He needs a whole backstory to excuse why he met them, which no. Which is why I said if I didn't play the games, I feel like I would have enjoyed this episode a lot more. But I did, and it's done better there. I just hated what they did with Henry. Let's talk about Sam being deaf. My issue is at the end of the episode, they explain why they made that change to make Sam deaf. And their explanation was that they made Sam deaf, or someone on the team suggested that they make Sam deaf in order to make him more dependent on Henry.
And it's a way that Sam has to rely on Henry even more.
No. That's not why you add disabilities to characters. I think there's like 7 minutes of credits at the end of each episode, so if you watch that, that's actually what Neil Druckmann says. And no one who filmed this, no one who uploaded it, saw a problem with this, and I think that's a problem within itself. You're basically saying, we didn't make this character deaf because we wanted to enrich the character, or we wanted to use his deafness in unique ways. We wanted to make him more dependent on Henry. Oh, okay. You just wanted to add to his innocence, so you made him deaf. Okay, that is a choice that you made. I feel like Sam's deafness could work in a better episode. Why it doesn't work in this episode, at least for me, is also why him being younger doesn't work. I feel like him being younger just takes away from his character. Him being deaf itself, like I said, is not the problem. You can make characters deaf, you just have to think about what it might take away from their character, especially when you already have an established character. His youth also takes this away, but his and Ellie's friendship. In the game, Sam is 13 and Ellie is 14, and that kind of adds to it because they talk a lot. While Joel and Henry are kind of still wary of each other, Sam and Ellie become friends, like actual friends. And you can say that 14-year-old TV series Ellie and Sam become friends, but you really can't. Sam is like half her age. At most, she's a older figure sister, whoa, I said that backwards. Or she's entertaining him while the adults are able to relax. To me, when I saw Ellie and Sam, especially Henry calling Sam Ellie's friend, would you honestly say at your age, at whatever age you are, let's say if you're 18, could you honestly be friends with a 9-year-old? Like, that's what I mean. You wouldn't say that you're friends with them, right? You might entertain them, you might like them, you might see them as like a younger sibling, but I don't think you could be legitimate friends with someone half your age. And also, it makes it very hard for Ellie to communicate with him. I just wasn't sure throughout this episode whether Sam was teaching her sign language or if she already knew sign language, because it was never mentioned. Ellie just sometimes does sign language. It's not like she makes mistakes. It's not like she signs the wrong signs or is clumsy at it. She signs perfectly. So it makes it confusing. At least to me, I was confused on whether Ellie already knew how to sign, and I kind of wish the show had mentioned that. Or if she didn't, she would have had trouble signing, or at least not be perfect at it every time. I liked the scene of them writing to each other on his notepad. I thought that was very cute. And it was also very sad. I feel like in a lot of other scenes, it's just her talking at him. I don't know if Ellie can actually understand him, the way Henry can. I wish there was even like a throwaway line about it. Like, Ellie learned sign language in the Fedra Military Academy before this episode, and look, I doubt after this episode she's going to use sign language one time. Before this episode, Ellie never signs. She never indicates that she knows sign language. It's just Sam shows up and Ellie now signs sometimes. So Game Ellie and Sam, they become friends. When Sam gets bitten and turns, that honestly makes it hit a lot harder, because at this point in the game, you were led to believe that Ellie had always been alone. Like, Sam is legitimately her first friend. Her first friend. Or at least that's what you're led to think until the Left Behind DLC. But at this point in time, you think this is the first time Ellie has had positive human interaction with another child her age. And you want that for her. She really seems to never have had that. And that is completely lost in the show, because they cannot have that same level of friendship. They just can't. And I don't think they really thought about that at all. If you were 30, would you really have that much in common with someone who is 20 or 19 or 15? Actually 15. Half of 30 is 15. Would you have common interests? Would you want to be friends with a 15-year-old? They just lose that. The show never really manages to replace it with anything else for me. Sam's death is sad, but I feel like it's not as sad as the game. I feel like The Last of Us actually added nuance to his death. And in the show, yes, it's a loss for Ellie, but it's not on the same... I mean, you do care because he's a child, but you care about this child death because he's a child and he died. And children should not die. So therefore, child death, sad. But in the game, it's a loss because Sam was legitimately her friend. Her only friend in this apocalypse where she was raised probably to become a soldier. I mean, you don't get put into military academy to become a cook. In the show, she attempts to save Sam, quote unquote, by putting her blood in his wound. She thinks it might cure him because it might be miracle blood. And while that is a nice thought, it's also the very first time Ellie has ever mentioned thinking of her blood in this way. You would think, right? When she found out that Tess was bitten, she might have been like, we have to try something. I don't want you to die. But no, Ellie does not mention her miracle blood thoughts with Tess because the writers had not thought of it at that time. There were so many weird moments this episode, and I suppose that will be the title of the next section. There are two times that Kathleen had Henry at gunpoint, and she hates Henry so much. She goes on and on about how she can't forgive Henry for what he did, and how she's gonna make him pay, and how she's gonna kill his brother for just being associated with him. But when she has Henry at gunpoint in front of her, she doesn't pull the trigger. She gets distracted. She gets distracted the first time because the ground crumbles away behind her, and she actually turns her back to Henry, which is absolutely insane. It's completely insane because of what we know about this character. She lowers her gun, puts her back to Henry, points it at the ground that's crumbling because zombies are coming up. All of the resistance members were there pointing their guns at this hole. They're probably not going to be mentioned again. So she decides to put her back to Henry so he can escape, which she had him at gunpoint, but she hears a noise and turns around. Like, this show doesn't want me to take it seriously. The second time, she has him at gunpoint again, and she gets distracted, I think by a clicker or something, or gunfire. Twice now, she has the person she hates most on planet Earth at gunpoint. Could easily pull the trigger, kill him, and then take care of whatever is behind her. But instead, she's like, oh, I'm gonna turn around. I know I live in a zombie apocalypse, but this noise, I gotta turn to look at it. And that's how Henry gets away twice. And why? Does the show want me to take it seriously or not? Because I'm very confused right now. Yeah, it would have been very satisfying if she had just shot Henry and been done with it. If you want me to treat it like a Marvel movie where the heroes won't die, just tell me. But if you want me to take it as seriously as The Last of Us wants me to take it, you can have your cake and eat it too. Do you want me to take it seriously, or do you want me to just think that this is all clown shoes and I should just accept whatever's going on screen? I think I've said everything that I wanted to say about that episode. There are a few positives, there are many, many negatives, and now I'm out of steam. So I'm out of here.